Ladies and gentlemen, there are cars that I want in this world that make absolutely no sense. They're probably some of the worst vehicles you could buy. They're unique. They're probably unreliable. They make absolutely no sense. The Alfa Romeo 75, the Volvo P1800, the Mercedes-Benz AMG GTR in that flat matte green. Those cars have a special place in my heart for no other reason than because my eyeballs think they look cool. But there's one car above all of those that I will own one day for no other reason than because it is so cool. And that, my friends, is Toyota Century. These cars are insane. I don't even know how to understand how these cars have gotten so cool, but I've come to realize that you also think that they're cool. So while you're getting ready to make your dinner time, I figured I would hit you with a plethora of knowledge on the Toyota Century, because what is a YouTube video if not just a place to learn useless amounts of information about things that you probably will never actually take any action on? Which, by the way, if you're enjoying this series, if you could do me a hot solid, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and of course, let me know what car you think we should talk about next in the comments. And if you're looking for car parts, mod your car with your friends at martiniworks.com. It's how we're able to afford this chair. This chair right here that I'm sitting on is because of you. So it would be really also cool if we could pay for the heat bill because it's cold in Wisconsin. And you picking up your car parts from us helps us do that. So let's jump into the Toyota Century. There is this idea that you may not know what the Toyota Century is. And what I would argue back is you should. If you know the Toyota Supra, you should know the Century. If you know the GTR, you should know the Century. If you know the FDRX7, you should know the Century. There's only been 3 generations of this car over the course of 58 years. Since 1967. From 1967 to 1996, that's all one generation for the Toyota Century. The second generation came from 1997 to 2017. That is the generation we're probably going to spend the most time talking about because, quite honestly, that is the generation that most people are buying. The third generation is from 2018 to right around 2022. And while they did make a SUV version in 2023, kind of looks like a GV70, they don't call it an SUV, kind of like the Ferrari with the Pro Sangue. They just say that this is the best version of a sedan for a certain type of customer, I guess. I don't know. They're in denial. It's an SUV, but that's okay. The Toyota Century, no matter which way you swing it, the number one thing to keep in mind, it is the top vehicle of the Toyota nameplate. This car came out and you could only buy it at certain stores. You still can only buy it at certain stores. And this car was made as an homage to Sakichi Toyoda, who founded Toyota Industries as a centennial gift to what the brand represented. And if you think about that, and the reason that we all love Japanese brands for some reason or another is because we're infatuated with the concept that the Japanese can create something and can care about something that is greater than one's self. Us Americans cannot comprehend that concept. How could you care towards a communal greater whole? Toyota did that, and the result of that is the Toyota Century, and everything about this car is insane. Anything that you think is standard in your car and was revolutionary probably came on the Toyota Century like 35 years ago. The electromagnetic door latches that they have on these things came in the Toyota Century in 1967. Do you want to know why? Would you like to know why they came with electromagnetic sensors? Because they thought that the mechanical door latch lock sound from the inside of the car was too boisterous for the type of audience that they wanted to capture with selling this car to people. They wanted it to be quieter, and so the door latch is electronic. It also has any sort of like mechanical noises to be facing towards the door so that the interior people don't hear it. Number 2, automatic climate control, 1971, Toyota Century. Imagine that, okay? That was insane. For gangsterness, I would honestly put the Toyota Century on par with a Cadillac DeVille. I'm sorry, Cadillac DeVilles were super rad too. They came out, everybody loved them. They were considered the best of the best. And I love Japanese cars. I do, but Cadillac has a soft place in my heart. I want a Blackwing more than anything else in the world. Number 4, when you start to look at Toyota Centuries and you think about the 3 generations, obviously generation 1 ran the longest, but the most popular for folks like us is gonna be the 2nd generation. This is the one that came with the 5-liter 1GZ V12 with 276 horsepower. When we actually went to go check it out at Driver Motorsports, this was the vehicle that Gels got to drive around, and it was gangster as hell. This thing is so cool. It also had a body kit on it, some wheels, and air suspension, which we'll get into mods if you plan to modify one. But these things are so rad. They're so inconspicuous. But if you know it, you know. And when you do know, people just like fawn over this car. Anyway, they say that there was only 9,573 Centuries built for this generation, which is not that much, but you can still find them for a pretty good deal. Actually, one just went up for sale for like 15 grand here in the States. Here's what I'll say. The early versions had a 4-speed, but the newer ones that we can't get yet came with a 6-speed. So if you're not in a huge rush to snag one, I would recommend waiting for the 6-speed. But if you don't really care and you plan to just do a bunch of city driving, the 4-speed is going to do just fine. The 4-speeds are not really great at any sort of behavior on the highway, mostly because you've got a V12 4-speed, not just any engine, a V12. Imagine the oil and the gas consumption on that bad boy. Now, outside of that, everything else about this car is absolutely bang on. The answer is yes. There is a kick panel on the passenger side for the back passenger to rest their legs through the passenger seat. You can also still open it when somebody's sitting in there and you can kick them. Don't ask me how I know. You can get different paint codes. This is a big thing with the Toyota Century, and we're gonna get into the culture of the car here just like right after this. But I do wanna just kind of touch on the basics of the second gen, because I think that's most important. And besides, you're probably still waiting for the water to heat up. It's not boiling yet, okay? A couple bubbles is not boiling. You got to stop putting in the noodles early. I'm telling you right now. There are 5 colors that came on the second gen, and all of them have culturally significant names, and I'm going to do my best to not butcher them with my Midwest accent. Now, these are distinguished and unique to the Century. They are not any paint color that you can find on any other Toyota. The most popular one that you're going to see is Kamui Black. It's the most popular. There's also Mashu Shrine Blue Mika. There's Rimpo Glorious Gray Metallic, and then there is also Seika Radiant Silver Metallic, and then Seon Cloud Demure Blue Mika Metallic. Now, if you're wondering why this is such a big deal, the answer is because the amount of paint that these guys do on this car is insane. As of the 3rd generation, they're still layering 7 layers of paint on this car. And the 2nd generation specifically, each layer of black paint requires 4.5 hours of wet sanding in between each layer of paint that's applied to this car. That means the actual paint job of a car like this is gonna take upwards of 40 hours just to paint. On top of that, if you're looking at wondering which color you should get, you're probably only going to find the black ones for sale. Anything that's usually colored, whether that's the blue or the gray or the silver, typically don't come up for sale that often. They're usually either collected or maintained by the family, and it's usually a family heirloom kind of car thing. Usually a special reason as to why you'd get a Toyota Century and any other color besides black. Now, the front emblem, you're gonna notice, is a pretty prominent part of this car, and it's because the symbol is hugely culturally significant to Japan. Now, the front emblem is called, I'm really trying not to mess this up, okay? I'm trying my best. I watched the videos on YouTube. I did. Hu-u. It's the Japanese phoenix, and it's a huge part of Japanese cultural significance. You guys can mock me in the comments. I already know that you're going to. Please just create a running list of all the things that I said wrong. However, I am trying, okay? Now, anyone who works on this car will wear actually the Phoenix Grill badge on like their person, so you can actually tell who's working on this car. The paint we talked about, wet sanded. It's polished by hand, has 7 layers of paint. Here's the crazy thing with this. There's only so many people that are allowed to work on this car. And when the car comes to them, there's a level of manual labor on this car where it's almost hard to understand how Toyota even makes money. I'm almost convinced they don't. Because when Toyota introduced the Century, they kind of stated that, hey, this car isn't for people who want a Rolls Royce. This isn't for people who want a Bentley. This isn't for people who are trying to define their status by the car that they drive. They quote, Toyota Century is acquired through persistent work, the kind that is done in a plain but formal suit. That's it. That's why Toyota makes the Century. And what is a result of that is that you see a lot of executives using Toyota Century, and a lot of times people who have kind of reached a certain level of executive status in Japan will have a Toyota Century. When we went to one of the public rest houses in Japan, and we pulled in our little bus, I want to say 5 of the 7 cars that were in the parking lot were all Toyota Centuries, whether it was the 2nd generation or the 3rd generation, and they were all Kamui black. If you're wondering how rare it is an uncommon car, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's rare. If you want to pick one up, you definitely can. They're coming in more and more. A lot of times these cars have ultra low miles because they're not really driven that much. You're gonna notice that it's definitely not built for the driver, it's built for the passengers, so you have to be okay with it. Your role as driving the car is that it's effective, it's functional, it gets the job done. But really the goal of the Century is for people who sit in the back seats. Now they do say that right as of 2023, they're pumping out about 50 of them a month, which is not high, it's definitely not low, but it's enough of a production number to say that you can get your hands on it. What fuel efficiency is a Toyota Century? It's not great. But who the hell cares? Who cares? Do you care? If you care about gas mileage on a Toyota Century, you should not be buying a Toyota Century because these are V12 25-year-old 2nd gen sedans that weigh like 2.5 tons. These things are anything but practical and efficient, and I'm surprised that we're even allowed to have them. If you live in California, God bless and Godspeed. There's a couple cool facts and features about this car. Number 1, there's a little perforation, there's a little design style that's on the side of the Toyota Century. It kind of sits, I want to say about 6 inches below the side mirror. And it's very important to know that that is something that's done on purpose. It's not just to like break up the car design language. This is something that comes off of the stamping plant, okay? The Century Master Craftsman will spend hours on the base car that comes in. So they essentially get this gigantic sheet of bodywork metal that has the start. And for most people, that's where you would kind of start to build the car. There are master craftsmen that will come out with their own personalized set of tools that is given to them from Toyota once they achieve master craftsman status within the company, to then hand stamp and adjust the bodywork to what they feel is the perfect Toyota Century. Because they say that no matter what and above all else, a Toyota Century must look like a Toyota Century from all angles. It has no direct competitor. It doesn't state itself as a competitor to anything. It just must universally be accepted as a Toyota Century no matter where you look, which means the master craftsman will go out there with their hand tools and stamp any imperfection out of the car, and they have absolutely no time limit on how long it takes to actually do this. The side design on the car is actually based on room partitions that were popular in the high-end period from 794 to 1185 CE. You might think to yourself, this is a lot of hype for a car. You're telling me a lot of stuff that I feel like might just be marketing sauce or pizzazz. And the answer is you're gosh darn right I am. Here's why. The Toyota Century was built to show the culture and pride of Japan for Toyota, not TD. So when you look at this car, you're looking at a car where they were trying to do everything they could to make this the pinnacle vehicle that could ever be produced from Japan, which I would honestly say is definitely worth it and one of the coolest cars you could possibly learn about. The inspection process is so tedious and it's done by one person. Typically in a manufacturing plant for a car, you'd have 10, 15, 20, 25 people inspecting very specific portions of the car. With the Century, it's different. One person inspects the whole car. Only 3 people are qualified to do the hand finishing on the Century body panels, and one of the 3 has been working on this car since the first generation of Toyota Century. All right, so with that out of the way, you might have heard the whole C-pillar rumor. The C-pillar rumor is really simple. It's that the C-pillar is so glossy that it would allow a woman to check her makeup before she went out. That's kind of like the rumor. And it's true-ish. It was actually made and built so wide so that the emperor can look at himself as he exits the car to adjust himself before he turns around for any sort of photos, videos, or any sort of announcement. Toyota did that purposely. But they also say, and this is a fun fact that not a lot of people know about, which by now your noodles are probably ready. They say that this dates back to an important symbol of the Shinto religion. And one of the 3 sacred treasures of Japan were Shinto, is essentially this concept of a mirror that often is seen at shrines, and it's representative of the kami. Now, it's a vital role, and I'm trying to read this off, and what it's essentially trying to say is that the idea is that the spirit, you, enters into the object to take the physical form. The mirror acts as an interface between the physical and spiritual realms of existence. The point of this is that they wanted that C-pillar to be so clear, and they take inspiration from the concept of what this is, which is essentially a sacred treasure to the Japanese culture, that you feel one spiritually and physically before you go out into the world. And that the prince and the emperor, I'm sorry, not the prince, but the emperor and the family and anybody who's in the car can use the C-pillar as a way for them to reflect spiritually and also physically to prepare them for the day. This is not marketing hazard. I'm not getting paid by Toyota. I am telling you what I read in the books that were PDF'd and scanned in onto the internet. This is some very interesting stuff. Speaking of which, every single Toyota Century that is built has a book, and it's kept with Toyota forever. Every single Toyota Century they've ever built is on record, and if there's ever a time where any of the master craftsmen had to change a torque spec or had to change something with the vehicle, they'll actually print off a little sticker and they'll put it over whatever the factory specifications were in the book. It's really, really interesting. How do you modify them? So here's the thing. Toyota Centuries, very, very cool cars. Not necessarily the prettiest to look at in its stock format. It's very big, it's very bulky, the windows are very tall. The side profile of the car is very weird because when you open the door, there's actually no lift that you need to put your leg over to get out. They make it flat so it's easy to get out because their goal is that the emperor does not have any distinguishable effort in getting in or out of the car, which is why they made the floorboard flat with the runner panel. Goddamn, Toyota. This is a good car. There's a lot of things about this though that if you actually look at it, it's kind of a boring car to look at. The wheels are small, the tires are huge. The air suspension kind of system will start to leak over time. They do burn oil. They're highly inefficient, but they're wrapped. If you're gonna modify them, there's not much that you have to do. Actually, Mike did a great job with this Toyota Century. One of the most gorgeous cars I think I've ever seen before. I think he's running working mitts of some kind, but any sort of multi-spoke wheel is going to look absolutely insane on this car. My recommendation is to throw it on air, put some chrome wheels on that thing, and enjoy it. There is not much you need to do to these cars to really love it. The paint is spectacular. The chrome needs to stay. You can throw a body kit on it if you want, and I think body kits can actually help the car quite a bit because instead of the front bumper kind of coming in, it kind of shoots out. It gives it more of like a shoebox appearance, and then the back bumper doesn't cut in. It kind of cuts down. It gives it like a more aggressive VIP style. I think you can do that, but you don't need to. I think with air suspension, something from like an Airlift 3P, throw it on some working mitts or throw it on something that's a multi-spoke style, and then just make sure you get tires that can handle the load rating of this car. A lot of people will stretch their tires to get a nice stance. You can do that if you want to. My recommendation is try to get the most bubbly tire you can, and then make sure that the load rating is good for it. These cars are heavy. They are 2.5 tons of pure comfort. Why would you buy one of these? They're dope. They're super dope. They're so cool, all right? It's the 1JZ was Japan's only V12 in a production car with variable valve timing. This was the car that Smokey Nagata tore the motor out of, slapped 2 turbos onto it, and started making waves back in the late 90s by taking that top secret golden smoke Supra to like 200 miles an hour. This car is the ultimate representation of what I think Japanese car culture could represent from a manufacturer's perspective, and we get to buy these things for $15,000 instead of $180,000, which is how much a third generation Century costs right now. The front emblem is rad. It's handmade. It takes, I think, 6 weeks for a master craftsman to put the Phoenix on the front of that car. These things are art, and if you're buying a Toyota Century, you are buying art, which means when you buy art, you usually don't need to do a lot to the art. Usually you put it in a frame, you make sure that it looks good, and you hang it. A Toyota Century is the same thing. You don't need to change the art. The art's already there. Add a couple things onto it, some wheels and tires from Martini Works, or I'm calling the morgue, and you're set. The good news is you're probably not looking to buy a Toyota Century. Chances are you're not looking for a V12 rear-wheel drive car because it's the middle of February and it's snowing and it's cold and everything sucks. Even down south, we just got back from Daytona, it was freezing there, which means this information is completely useless, and you and I are yet again Gonna add another car to the list of cars we wanna own, but probably shouldn't because it's irresponsible. But it's really rad. All right, you guys let me know what car you think we should talk about next. Thank you so much for learning a little bit about the Toyota Century with me. And of course, if you're looking to modify your car, which could be a Century or not, modyourcarmartiniworks.com. I'm Alex Martini. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you on the next one. Adios.